Our first speaker is Bryan Weaver. He's running for city council this year, so I just want you to know. And also that he's about to be in Amila's first edition Hall of Fame.
Jeez.
Ta-da!
You had dreads?
Long hair and the beard. Look at that.
That's so extra. That's so extra.
So, Bryan Weaver is also one of the famous guys that everybody know around this part. Skips the line. Shocking, right? So, he is the guy that y'all need to look for when y'all need to go out to a wonderful trip, actually. He do a lot of things overseas. He's known overseas in Guatemala too. And he actually did this little basketball camp overseas. Big basketball camp overseas. The big basketball camp, it helped students from parts of cities in Guatemala.
The cities.
Yeah, villages or cities in Guatemala to help the kids to go to a higher education.
Sixth grade.
Sixth grade.
The villages we work in, so there's the population in Guatemala, we're way off. The population in Guatemala is mostly like Latino, which are people who are of mixed descent of white and of Mayan Indian or of African slaves. And then the Mayan population. And the Mayan population believe in sort of the ancient traditions, they speak their ancient language, they worship gods in the way that they did thousands of years ago. And there's a big conflict between these two groups. And so in most of the Mayan communities, there's no public education beyond the sixth grade. So kids who will end up getting out of sixth grade, and suddenly it's like, if your family can't afford to send you on to a private school or find a religious school that will take you in, that means that you normally end up getting married very, very young, you find a job somewhere, you end up working in sort of a Latino family's households. And so we have a scholarship fund. It started just for girls, but now we have boys and girls in it. That send them on from 7th grade all the way through high school. And so university. Yeah, Mindy's self-funding about 3 university students right now.
So I want to sit down and let him talk about more of his work and his ideas that when he started from, and now he's here.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk about DC Statehood. Anyone familiar with DC Statehood?
No. Oh yes,
You're working for it. Okay. Anything else? So why is it that why is it we're not a state? Okay, but why is it that we're not part of Maryland or part of Virginia? Okay, but we could be one city, we could be like Baltimore in Maryland. Huh? Anybody know? So way back in the 1800s, the capital of the United States was first New York and then was Philadelphia. Oh, Baltimore, sorry, Baltimore. When the capital was in Philly, a group of Philadelphia soldiers who hadn't been paid went and surrounded the Capitol building and essentially held all of the congressmen in the Capitol hostage. And so they tried to they wanted to make the new capital, and you were going to make the new capital here. They didn't want to associate it with any other state. That way you wouldn't have a militia from one town, because before it wasn't like we had one united army. It was each state had their own army, or even in some places their own city would have their own army. So they didn't want to have a place that was going to be beholden to one state or one municipality. So they said, we're going to just make Washington D.C. and it won't belong to any of the states. It'll be independent of everyone. Problem was, there was only about 500 people that were living in D.C. at the time, right? How many people do we have now?
600.
Right. So which, at the time that this was done, there were 40,000 people living in New York City. How many people live in New York City now? Depending on how many boroughs you're talking about, somewhere between 7 and 11 million people, right? Millions of people We have 600,000 people here, and essentially we have no vote in Congress. Now, there's three things that we've tried to do. There's people who want statehood, people who just want voting rights, and then people who are opposed to it, want to keep it as we are right now. All right? I have Puerto Rico up here. Why do I have Puerto Rico up here?
We got more population.
They do. What is Puerto Rico? What is it? It's a state's a country. What is it? Country? What is it? City? What? City? Country? If you're born in Puerto Rico, what nationality are you? Puerto Rican? Puerto Rican? So like you go and you get like, if you were to go get a passport to go travel somewhere, the passport they're giving you has what on the front? Like if I go down, I get one that says United States of America. What does Puerto Rican say? Spanish? From Spain or?
Oh, no, Puerto Rico.
From Puerto Rico.
That's what I think too.
What? Puerto Rico. Malik, you're born in Puerto Rico. What are you?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rican? What nationality are you?
American.
American. Puerto Rico is part of the United States of America. Yes.
No.
Part of the United States of America. If you were born in Puerto Rico, if you're born in Puerto Rico, you're a United States citizen. You would have an American passport. Right?
American passport.
You can travel anywhere in the world, and there are more Puerto Ricans who like serve in the armed forces than almost any other state in the Union.
What if they can't speak English?
Are there Americans who can't speak English?
Americans can't talk about.
Most Puerto Ricans probably don't speak English. You could join the. You don't even have to be a citizen to join the United States military. You could be a legal resident from Mexico, not speak English, and join the military. That's allowed, right? So, Puerto Ricans, right? How many votes do they have in the United States Congress?
That many.
No.
Five.
Two or one?
Zero.
Guesses? Anybody?
You said how many left?
Zero.
Zero. What are they? They're not a state,
They're part of the U.S.
right? They're part of the U.S. They're not a state.
The U.S.
They're
territory.
U.S. territory. So they have no representation. They have one person who's there in the House of Representatives, who's their resident commissioner, who can participate in debates, can go and vote if it's something that has something to do with Puerto Rico, but the vote doesn't count.
So I would not count with the violence anyway.
Right, so that's what happens with Puerto Rico, right? Every other state in the Union has at least 2 senators, right? At least 1 representative and 2 senators. So everybody, no matter how big or small, they have at least 3 votes. No votes. How many votes do we have?
3, 4, 0.
Ultimately, 0.
For real?
We have one representative. Does anyone know her name?
Ellen. I don't know. Is it Eleanor Holmes?
Yeah, Eleanor Holmes Norton. So Eleanor Holmes Norton can go and argue about a bill and fight over a bill, but when it comes time to vote, she can't vote for the bill. And it can be all about DC, right? But she can't vote for it.
Why not?
Because we are not a state.
Well, we need to be a state.
So,
DC needs to be a state.
What would be the neighborhood?
what's that?
What would be our name? What is this be Washington?
In 1993, we tried to pass a piece of legislation in Congress. We were going to be called New Columbia. And that was the idea. Or some people just said the District of Columbia, to keep that as the name of the state. Yeah.
Well, I was saying, because when we write, when we fill an application, we always put city, Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
state, well,
DC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if we're not a city.
But that's just you filling out a form. That's for a way. If you're Puerto Rican, it's the same thing. You would write in, what city you live in, San Juan, what state, Puerto Rico. It's the same thing. Yes, ma'am.
I'll just tell you a funny story. That when I went to rent a car in Florida, I had my DC driver's license, and I gave her the DC driver's license, and she's like, "Well, what state is that in?" I'm like, "It's not in a state." She goes, "It's not in Virginia." I'm like, "No, it's its own thing. The District of Columbia is its own entity." And this is somebody who had no idea.
Dang.
So if you're Puerto Rican, if you're from Puerto Rico, in an island of almost 4 million people, right, and you have no vote in the United States Congress, but you're an American citizen, are there any advantages in Puerto Rico to not being a state?